Gender-neutral pronouns. Should we use them? So when it comes to sexist language, I know when I analyze this prescriptive rule, I'm going to see that it's not widely used as it should be. That's just one of my predictions. I also predict that although the rule is super useful and reasonable, many people won't want to conform to this type of grammar rule. I'm interested in this rule because we are currently living in a generation where you can never truly assume who someone wants to identify as. This rule would help people to be more aware in their writing and in their regular speech so that they wouldn't make the mistake of misgendering someone. To give some background on the rule, in the 18th century, prescriptive grammarians said that the masculine was the worthier gender and that he should be used in generic references to mixed-sex categories. So the feminists got very angry at this, and the principle that the masculine imports the feminine was written into British legislation by the 1815 Interpretation Act, and the same formula was subsequently adopted by many other institutions around the English-speaking world. So from that point on, people did start to change a little bit, but because the grammarians in the 18th century ruled the he as the worthier gender, it kind of stuck around for quite a long time. So in the Merriam-Webster entry for epicene pronouns, it says, one of the most annoying gap in English vocabulary is that created by the lack of a third person singular pronoun that does not state explicitly the sex of the person or person spoken to. So most of the time, people prefer you to use they, them, or their as their pronoun, but the problem with that is, like they say, that there's no indication of its meaning as singular or plural. So you can use they, them, or their, but you never know if you're talking about more than one person or not. So some tips on avoiding gender-biased pronoun. The first one, obviously, is to use a plural form, so using that they, them, and their, even though you don't really know if you're specifying plural or not. And then the second one is omitting the pronoun altogether. So instead of saying a sentence like, each doctor should send one of his nurses to the workshop, you could say each doctor should send a nurse to the workshop, so that way you're not specifying a gender. Another rule would be to use his or her, he, she, or s/he when you occasionally need to stress the action of an individual. Such references won't be awkward unless they're frequent. So, if you're just saying a sentence like, if you must use a technical term he or she may not understand, explain it. Just to specify both genders. And then you can also vary pronoun choice when you want to give examples in emphasizing the action of an individual. Ideally, choose pronouns that work counter to prevailing stereotypes. So like if there's a sentence like she wanted to play with her dolls, you could change it to he wanted to play with his dolls. Or if there's a masculine sentence, you can put a feminine, the feminine pronoun for it, just to take away that stereotype. And then lastly, you can switch from the third person he to the second person you or a you understood when this shift is appropriate for what you're writing. So for example, if the boss is saying everyone should report the progress to me by May 1st, or just something like that, he could say you should report your progress to me by May 1st, just so he's like using the you or a you understood instead of the he or she in an email. So when I use the corpus of historical American English, and I put in the pronouns, you can obviously see that he is the most frequent pronoun, and that she is second, but it's not even a close second. So if you look at all the other ones, it's not even close to how often he is used. And then for the corpus of contemporary American English, we see the same thing here. He is blowing all the other ones out of the water. There is usage of he, she, and then the s/he as well, and she, he, but it's nowhere near the amount that he is used. And then for the Google Ngram, I did he, she, and they is actually used more than she. He, like all the other ones, is way above. He, way above she and they, but we see that she is like at the bottom. And there was a rise at some point, but it still has never been as large as he. Same thing for they. So, in conclusion, even though the rules should be followed, and even though the pronoun she is becoming more popular, this rule is obviously not being followed. As there is a strive for change toward gender-neutral pronouns, over time it has become such a habit to use he. I think the rule should be followed, but it probably won't be, so in the end, the rule is not valid in our time, because he is so widely used.